Everyone wants to live an inspired life, yet so many people search for happiness following the footsteps of peers and taking advice from people who have different values and outcomes to which they're searching. There are people born into wealth, graduated from the best universities in the world, and there are people who have none of that and yet are living extraordinary lives full of fulfillment and reward. The purpose of this podcast is to share insights and strategies that allow you to question the status quo and think freely, so you can design your life and be who you want to be. We get one life. Time is our most valuable asset. I believe that when we're free and able to focus on meaningful work, we become better human beings. This is Always Free, and I'm your host, Jason Graystone.
Welcome to the leading podcast for financial empowerment and wealth creation. Subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can connect with Jason on social media and subscribe to the Jason Graystone YouTube channel for weekly videos. Don't forget to also subscribe to the weekly newsletter to receive frequent educational content and action steps to help you design your life so you can be who you want to be. For news on all future events and updates, go to jasongraystone.com.
Alright guys, welcome back to the podcast. Hope you've had a nice week. Had a bit of a break last week because it was my 10-year wedding anniversary, and me and the wife spent a little bit of time, best part of a week, out in a very, very beautiful location in Ibiza, which was an absolute chill. I just got rid of the phone, got rid of the laptop, other than some kind of swing trades that I had monitored. That was about it. I got away from everything and just enjoyed the chill time, the reconnection, and it was just amazing. So hope you've all had a good week. If this is the first time you're listening to this is the number one podcast for financial empowerment and wealth creation. And if you haven't listened to the other episodes, I highly recommend you go back to the beginning and start listening there, because this is kind of it's almost in order, really, based on the principles of my Tears to Freedom program. So it's essentially my life strategy of how I became financially independent, and I've gone through the podcast in the correct order, in the way that everyone should do it if they want to achieve the same. So if you have listened and you're an avid listener, you're probably in the gym, or go walking the dogs, or on the way to work, or maybe you're in your office. And thank you very much for listening to this podcast so far. This is episode 26, and I've got an annoying voice, and you've stuck with me for this long. So thank you very much for that. So the last podcast, episode 25, was all about kind of financial independence explained, getting out of debt, and I didn't want to go too much into kind of too many other negative subjects as well as debt, but I do want to talk about recession in this one, because this is a wealth podcast, okay? This is a financial freedom podcast, and the strategies around recessions are going to come into play, and they're going to be very important on how you play those. But before I get stuck into that, leading up to that, I want to touch on kind of stuff we hear and how we've had kind of the wool pulled over our eyes, and how the internet has brought out this, accessible information that's spreading like wildfire. It really is. People are learning quicker and quicker and quicker, and, people are becoming far more knowledgeable in seconds. Because they're taking all this information in that just wasn't available before. And the internet's doing a great job of educating the masses. And it was funny because I was talking the other day to someone about, certain emotive subjects, certain subjects that pull on the heartstrings, certain subjects that get people's back up. You hear all this thing that you shouldn't discuss certain topics at dinner and all that. But there are certain subjects that are very emotive, very, very, they play very, very strongly on emotions. And I was talking about them, and kind of, we was talking about how they're not really emotive. It's not the actual facts that are emotive. It's the feeling that you've got behind the subject, and that's normally due to this information becoming available. So, like, examples is the school curriculum. So I took my son out of school, and someone really got the hump with me, sending me some comments, and this guy wanted to be a chemist, and he completely missed the point But he was saying, but it's risky taking your son out of school. What if he wants to be and he was really emotionally charged with the subject of dropping out of school. And I started talking about the curriculum. And when you think about the curriculum in a school, it's just made up. It was made up curriculum to get people to a certain level that would get the masses to a level that where they could go and get a job. But let's just bring that into a more kind of modern, not too modern, but slightly more modern, because obviously school's very much based around industrialized manufacturing and all that kind of stuff. Let's just take that a little step further and bring it into the future a tiny bit. And let's give an example. Let's just say that we were creating our own grades around building a car. So we wanted to train a load of people that were going to be able to go out and build a manual car. Okay, so you've got to be able to be trained on how to construct a gearbox, how to put together the clutch and how the clutch works, etc. And then once you're trained in that yourself, you go out and you tell everyone that manual cars are the absolute best, and you should always learn in a manual car because then you'll be able to drive both. So you're very, very passionate about it, and you create this education system. Well, guess what? You've made up that education system, because all you have to make up is the bits to get people trained enough to put together that manual car in a safe and sound and satisfactory order at a profit, right? So you're putting this education system together, and you say you must learn this, you must be tested on this, you must know how to do this, you must be tested on that. And then once you've done that, you are certified to build a manual car. And once you've built manual cars, you're going to love them. And then a few years go by, and people start saying, manual cars, they're not really going to be a thing soon. Manual cars are going to get phased out. And what will happen in that conversation with the person that's dedicated his life to creating an education system around it and being very passionate about it and saying, no, you absolutely have to learn this to put together a manual car, and manual cars are the best because if you learn in a manual, you can drive automatic or manual. And then someone's saying, but they're not really going to be a thing soon. That's going to get like a heated debate, but it's not a lie. It's facts that manual cars will be phased out, but it's the emotion from the person because he's been duped into dedicating a lot of his life to learning how to do that and putting together an education system that's now invalid. It's getting phased out. And although they were telling everyone how good they were and how important it is to learn in a manual, no one's now learning in a manual. When my son learns to drive a car, I won't tell him to learn in a manual because it's ridiculous. That would just be going backwards, because why would you tell him to learn in a manual car when manual cars just won't be around? Well, they might. There's always going to be a few people that will be, into that, but the majority, and if you're looking out for the planet and all that kind of stuff, you're going to be looking at moving with the future. You're going to be looking at automatic cars, self-driving cars, and all of that education system, all of that curriculum that you've built to train people to build manual cars is now invalid. And when it gets emotional in those conversations, that what they normally say, if you was to go and tell those people, we're going to have electric cars and then self-driving cars and likes of Tesla and all that, what they'll say is something like, oh, that's madness, crazy in today's world, mad. But there's no meaning or logic behind their argument. It's just emotional. They're getting emotional because they've been basically led down the garden path into something that isn't future-proofed. And the real information, the logic and the science backs that electric cars are better and self-drive cars are going to be better, and they just can't get their head around it. So the point is, the education system was developed for something that people will always want. There will always be the certain people that want to do that. If you want to be an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor or a surgeon, you have to go through that process. If you want to work in manufacturing, you probably have to go through that process. But most of the jobs now on Google, and they're not taking in grades anymore. You're making up your own curriculum. These companies are making up their own curriculum because they've realized that's all it is. It's made up. It's made up to get a result, to get a standard. And it doesn't matter what that standard is because it's different in every company. So most of the kids in school now are learning something, and in 10 years' time, they will have jobs that don't even exist yet. Okay? So there's jobs that aren't even created yet. So that's education. And then there's the same with protein and we must eat meat. We've just seen a film come out called Game Changers with Arnold Schwarzenegger, all these kind of Olympic athletes, Lewis Hamilton, David Hay, all these kind of elite athletes talking about how you absolutely don't need animal protein. And now there's a massive arguments about veganism and yes, you do need animal protein. And the thing is, it's not an argument. It's scientifically backed that it's much healthier, and we're not designed to eat meat. It's much healthier to have a plant-based diet. In fact, it's the only diet that's completely reversed disease, heart disease. So there's no argument. It's scientifically backed. The reason people have still got strong opinions against it is because they feel like they've been lied to. And it's emotional. No one wants to have been shown up. No one wants to have been made to look wrong. No one wants to have been lied to and everything they've believed up until this point is wrong. And when it's challenged, that's when the emotion comes out. Same with houses, right? Get on the property ladder. Yeah, that's the best thing. Well, that was a bank's marketing strategy. A mortgage is a bank's marketing strategy, just like protein and you must eat animals is a farmer's marketing strategy. All of these old entrepreneurs, the bankers, the farmers, the landowners, right? The educators. And it's just emotional because you don't like being shown up. You don't like your beliefs being just crushed with a split second of information that's now available to everyone. High level information, scientific information. And people don't like it. So what has this got to do with the podcast? Well, I wanted to talk about recession. And because, there's many emotive sayings and phrases out there that are actually going to cause people to be in a worse situation when they're going through recession. So as we are in a recession, I believe we're in the recession already, but I want to kind of talk about how you can be recession proof, but also talk about those emotive subjects that might have held you going against what I'm going to say that will put you in a worse position during the recession. So one, to make sure that you don't get in the worst position, and two, to give you my tips and some of my recommendations for going into the recession. And if you can achieve these and put these in place, you're going to be in the best possible situation for the recession. So grab a pen and paper and I'll reel through them. First one is obviously build a cash buffer. I've said about this many, many times. Have a cash buffer. Make that an absolute priority. I've had so many people reach out to me, listeners of this podcast, and say, since I've saved the 6 months living expenses, it has made such a difference. And the reason it's important here, it doesn't mean that, you'll spend it in the recession. But what you'll find is by having it there, your mind will work better. And where everyone else is going a bit scared and cold turkey, you will generate even more income because you will be relaxed and calm. You will see things from a bird's eye view and you'll be able to create products from the heart rather than scarcity and scratching and clawing and all that kind of stuff. So cash buffer is absolutely essential. It will make sure your mind stays right, and it make sure you don't change your strategy. If you're in a business, you won't change your strategy. You'll just assess what's going on around you and you'll be there to sweep up. Next thing is buy assets, okay? Liquid assets. Businesses make the mistake of selling up when there's a recession. They think they're going to sell up their business. Business is doing perfectly well. You can get some really good bargains on businesses, right? Businesses that are doing 100 grand, 200 grand, 400 grand, 500 grand. You could actually go and buy those businesses at a discount, especially with this recession where we're going to have all of the baby boomers going into a recession trying to sell off all of their stuff to get out the game as quickly as possible. They want to sell their houses, their businesses, and you're going to be there. If you've got a little bit of buffer or a little bit of cash, put it into those businesses. Buy those. You can buy those for cheap. People get scared. They sell all their stocks and their positions back to the market. And that's the next thing, buying assets. If you're buying into, the market, if you're buying into diversified funds, you're going to get that price so cheap because everyone sells back. We see a retracement in the market. That means you get a cheaper price. You buy as much as you can. There's bargains all over the place. So buy as many liquid assets as you possibly can. The next one is be lean, as lean as you can. You know, if you're a business, go online. Put some of your products online, build an online product, deliver some of your service or business online. Listen to episode 19 of this podcast and build a highly evolved, highly efficient and highly profitable business on the principles of saving space and time. And if you go and listen to that podcast, I go in depth in that. Next thing is build automations and systems. If you're in business, automate as many of the low value tasks as you can. Build payment processors, use the apps and the technology that's out there to take payments quicker. I go to this local garage, right? We've got a swimming pool, and the place where we buy our chlorine from is a car garage. And I don't know why it's a car garage, but I think his brother owns like a pool company and they sell it through the car garage, the accessories. And we buy it from the car garage. Every time I go in there, right, it's so old fashioned. You go in there, I walk up to the counter and I say, yep, I'll just have a tub of chlorine. He gets out the little paper, the little paper book that you can buy from the stationers, and he fills it out every time. He says, right, what's your name? What is that, right? He does all the £25 plus VAT. He does all the calculator, writes it on the slip, does the 2 little carbon copy thing, pulls it out, says it's for me, takes my card payment. And it takes him about 5 minutes just to take a payment for some chlorine. And I asked him the other day, I said, how many of these do you sell per week? And he said 20 on average. So that's, 5 minutes times 20, that's over 1.5 hours work, right? Just taking payments for chlorine. That's just chlorine. That's without all of the clutch repairs, MOTs, tyre replacement, all the garage work that they do, because they're a car garage. But they're spending 1.5 hours taking payments for chlorine. That is absolutely madness. It's not an efficient way of doing business. And obviously they're just limited to that one garage, right? They're not online. They're open. They've got open hours. So build systems, utilize technology and apps, low cost apps that are out there, build customer onboarding processes, build email sequences that kind of onboard your clients and your staff. Get automated systems for your receipts and filing your receipts, like Receipt Bank. You take a picture of your receipt, it's digital, it's done, it's filed, it links with your CRM or your accounting software, and you throw the receipt in the bin. That's it, right? It does it all for you. So utilize those automations and those systems and build your own. And the next thing is create digital assets. Now, what I'm talking about here is video training, putting videos on YouTube of your methodologies and the way you think and your business and intellectual property, tools, spreadsheets. Use software like Slack and Notion and Google Sheets and things like that to keep your team 100% dynamic. If you've got a team, you want them to be as lean as possible. Utilize these tools, utilize these web-based shared documents and tools that are easily accessible at the click of a button. You want to be as lean as possible in terms of creating all those digital assets for your team. And if you're creating digital assets, you've got intellectual property that you're creating at the same time as well. So, go and create digital assets of your own. The next thing's expenses. It sounds like an obvious one, but go through all your expenses, do negotiations, reduce where you can. Also incentivize your team or your family, whether this is a business or in your household, incentivize your team or your family to make savings for rewards. So, if your wife or your kids find a cheaper deal, have this kind of pot where you say, right, whoever finds the best deal, we will reward them half of the savings. And you've got kind of like this shared pot like in the middle of the Monopoly board, which no one really knows what that money's for, but we won't. Every Christmas we get in heated arguments over what that actually money's for, and what goes in the middle, but hey ho. But have that, whoever finds the saving, whoever does the deal, whoever's, incentivize people to actually make savings and control your expenses. Then finally, ask people, like other people are in this position too. See who you can help and ask who can help you. See who you can partner with. What can you offer? What services and expertise can you offer someone else, or who has services and expertise that you need that you can couple with and add to your service. How can you get something for free by forming a partnership? Don't assume that you have to pay for everything with cash. Cash is one type of currency. There's lots of different currencies. You've got social currency, if you've got a big social following, or you've got social media presence, and you're big on, maybe you've got a TV channel or something like that. Maybe you've got a big YouTube channel or an Instagram following. That can be used as currency. You could have land as currency. Do you have a bit of land that you could rent out as office space, or someone's after a bit of land to do some filming, or maybe they want to just a little, something you can rent out to them in terms of land. That can be a currency. Expertise currency. You've got an expertise in you that you could provide services to someone else without having to charge. You could use your expertise to deliver something for someone, and then they could do the same for you. You could do that kind of fair exchange that way. Time currency, right? You could just spend time. If you've got some time, you can go and work on someone else's business or help them put in a lot of time for that, so they could put some time into your business maybe. Even if it's just, it doesn't have to be expertise. It could just be time. If you're just getting off the ground, you could just, maybe it's not a business. Maybe you're just a neighborhood and you're going through a little bit of a bad time and everyone else is. You could put together some kind of rota that you all work to and you all put time in. The other type of currency is connections. You might have connections that people want. What connections do you know that you could introduce for either a finder's fee or part of a deal, or maybe just to even introduce them so that that person now wants to repay you or introduce you to a contact that you're trying to get hold of. There's something called, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, where, apparently there's 6 people around you, and if you ask, I don't know how it goes, but you ask 6 people and you can kind of get a connection to Kevin Bacon. That kind of thing. What connections do you want, and what connections do you have? Who could you barter with? Who could you trade with? Next thing's IP currency, so intellectual property currency. If you was developing intellectual property, let other people use them. If you've built systems and spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff, rent them to people, sell them to people. Right? That's your IP that other people want. You've built that to solve a big problem. Now in your business, now other people have got that same problem. Go and sell it to them, rent it to them. So lots of ways to kind of use your internal and external currencies. There's lots of ways that partnerships can help. There's lots of partnerships that you can bring onto your business that are in a non-compete but similar industry that will enhance your product, or you could create a new product together, or you just both share your products and services to each other to make both products and services better. And that's very, very easy to do when you think about it. And lastly, if you are in business, I would say just niche down as much as possible. Be known as an absolute expert in one small, tiny niche where the message is extremely clear. Everyone knows you're the go-to person for that. And become as niche as possible. If you're known for fitness, for instance, you might want to be known as the fitness expert for over 40s with people with bingo wings, flab under their arms, right? So you niche down as much as possible and you go in all on that. So having said that and having all that in mind, if you are going to niche down, you're going to build a business, or you're going to get really strong and you're going to go and get loans and debts. Because another thing, people tell you not to get in debt and not to get loans. Well, if you're going to go all in on business, you should be leveraging other people's money. You could go and get debts and get loans if you're going to put it to work the right way. And that brings me on to my final point. And that is really everyone who kind of listens to this podcast, everyone who kind of listens to what I have to say, normally wants to achieve financial independence. Now, in order to generate financial independence, we need some form of income, okay, to start that process rolling, to start building financial freedom. We have to have one type of income. Now, there's only 2 ways we can generate income from the marketplace, because we only get money from other humans. That's it. We only get paid from other people in the market. We only get paid from the economy. And there's 2 ways to do that. One is the more traditional, which is a positive sum game, a positive sum business where it's win-win. You're providing a service, you're being an absolute expert niche, and you're going out and serving, you're changing lives, and you're getting paid handsomely for that, and then you're putting that into your personal wealth account, or accounts, I should say. And the other one is zero sum or negative sum, where you are beating someone at a skill, so like a sport, like boxing or golf, or you are learning a skill that's enabling you to beat other participants in the market, like investing, trading, and all of those kind of vehicles that allow you to generate an income without having to provide a service. Now, if you're going to do that, the question you need to be asking is, am I doing all I can to go in as hard as I can on these? Because with trading in particular, with a zero sum in particular, what normally happens is people have another positive sum job or a business, and they just dabble with trading and investing because they don't feel like they need to make it work because they've got another income, they've covered the bills with other stuff, and then don't go all in on it. But the truth is, if you want to be successful at trading and investing, you need to go all in. You need to develop that skill. And if you're going in on a positive sum business, you need to be serving people. You don't need to be average. You need to be exceptional at serving people. You need to be going all in to stand above the rest. You need to be doing your absolute best to give as much value as possible to your target audience. And you need to be going all in. So the question is, are you going all in to learn the skill of trading or investing? Or are you going all in on your business? Or are you going all in on both? You know, is there a way out? Or is it like, no, I have to absolutely make this work? And that's kind of the question that I want to leave you with. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, I highly recommend you go back to listen to episode 19, and also listen to episode 12, which is called How to Become a Millionaire. And in that session, I ask you 9 or 10 questions that you need to answer to really reset your mind and be where you need to be to take the next step. So hopefully you enjoyed the podcast, guys. I'll be back next week. Until then, have a great rest of your day and weekend, and I'll see you then.
Subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. For news on all future events and updates, go to jasongraystone.com.